It was past midnight. I remember that clearly because I had just checked my phone. 12 a.m. A quiet night, nothing out of the ordinary. The street outside my window was still, no cars, no voices, no movement, just an eerie stillness that felt unnatural the longer I sat there listening to it. At first, I told myself it was just my imagination. That kind of silence can play tricks on you. But then, there was a sound. A noise so faint that I almost convinced myself it wasn't there. A single step, not from inside my apartment, not from the hallway, but from outside, right outside my door. I stopped breathing for a moment, straining my ears, listening, waiting. The walls of my apartment were old, thin. I could hear everything. The creak of floorboards, the distant hum of a street lamp, the faint ticking of the clock on my nightstand, and then another step. This time, it was louder, heavier, closer. I felt it in my chest. The way my heartbeat changed, the way my body tensed before my mind could even process what was happening. My apartment was on the second floor. The hallway outside was empty. There was no reason for anyone to be standing there. But they were. I sat up slowly, trying not to make a sound. Every instinct in my body was telling me not to move, not to breathe, not to give away that I was awake, that I had heard them. But it was impossible to ignore the weight of that silence pressing against me. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but filled with something unseen, something waiting. And then, the sound changed. It was no longer just footsteps. It was something worse. The unmistakable, deliberate shift of weight. The kind of movement a person makes when they are standing in place, but adjusting their balance. Like they were hesitating, or deciding. That's when I realized they weren't just standing outside my door. They were listening. Listening to me, to my breathing, to my movements, to the way I had sat up in bed. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry, and then the door handle turned. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't hesitant, it was slow, deliberate. A test, a quiet, calculated attempt to see if the door would give way. I felt my body go cold, a kind of numbness creeping into my limbs, the kind that only comes when your brain is trying to protect you from something you don't want to understand. I told myself it was a mistake, that it was just the wind, that maybe someone had the wrong apartment. But deep down I knew better, because whoever was on the other side of that door wasn't knocking. They weren't announcing themselves. They weren't making a sound. They were just there, standing, listening, waiting. And then they tried again. A slow, careful twist of the handle, testing the lock, feeling for weakness. I wanted to move, wanted to reach for my phone, but my hands were frozen in place. My breath was shallow, my pulse hammering so hard against my ribs that I was sure they could hear it from the other side. Another pause, a long stretch of silence, and then the handle jerked. This time, harder, more forceful. No hesitation now. I shot up, heart slamming against my chest. I thought about calling out, demanding to know who was there, forcing some kind of response. But something in my gut told me not to. Told me that if I acknowledged them, if I let them know I was awake, it would only make things worse. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, the handle stopped moving. The air felt different, thicker, charged with something I couldn't explain. I didn't hear retreating footsteps. I didn't hear a door closing. Whoever was outside was still there, standing, listening, and then a whisper, a voice so soft it barely made a sound, but I heard it right on the other side of the door, and then nothing, no more movement, no more sound, just silence. I stayed frozen in place, counting the seconds, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Minutes passed, and finally, I moved. Slowly, carefully, I reached for my phone. My fingers fumbled as I unlocked it, pulling up the emergency dialer. But when I glanced back at the door, the handle was back to its normal position, as if nothing had happened, as if no one had been there at all. I wanted to believe I had imagined it, that the stress, the exhaustion, the late hour had made my mind create something that wasn't real. But then I saw it, the smallest thing, the kind of detail you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. The doormat. It had shifted. Not much, just an inch or two, but enough to prove that someone had been standing there, long enough to leave a mark. I stared at it, my heart pounding. I wanted to open the door, to look outside, to make sure they were gone, but something told me not to. Something told me that if I opened that door, I wouldn't like what I found. So I didn't. I stayed there, watching, waiting. Until finally, the first signs of dawn crept through the curtains. And that's when I knew. Whatever had been outside my door that night hadn't needed to break in, because it had never left. I didn't sleep that night. I wanted to. I wanted to close my eyes, to force my body into rest, to convince myself that what had happened, what I thought had happened, wasn't real. But no matter how much I tried, my body refused. I stayed awake, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening, and waiting. For what? I wasn't sure. Maybe another sound, maybe another whisper, maybe something worse. But nothing came, only silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't noticed before. Something I should have recognized the moment I moved in. The apartment was too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that brings peace. Not the comforting silence of a place where you feel safe. No, this was different. This was the kind of quiet that smothers you, that presses in from all sides, that makes you feel like you're not alone, like something is watching, listening, waiting. I had only lived there for a few weeks. It was small, nothing fancy, just a single-bedroom apartment at the edge of the city, the kind of place where people kept to themselves, the kind of place where no one asked questions. I moved in because I wanted the quiet. I wanted to be left alone. I didn't need much, just space, a bed, a lock on the door. But now I wasn't so sure, because something was wrong. It started with small things I could ignore at first, things I could explain away. Creaking floorboards when no one was walking, doors shifting ever so slightly even when the windows were closed, a faint tapping noise in the walls at night. I blamed it on the building, on the old pipes, on my mind playing tricks on me. But then there was my neighbor. Or rather, the lack of my neighbor. I had seen her once on the day I moved in. An older woman, frail, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that didn't seem to focus on anything for too long. She stood in her doorway watching me, her lips slightly parted as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. And then, just before she stepped back inside, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, barely a whisper. "Be careful at night." I remember laughing it off, making some joke about burglars or bad lighting, but she didn't smile. She just looked at me, looked through me, and then she shut her door. I never saw her again. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I hadn't heard a single sound from her apartment, no movement, no voices, nothing. I told myself she was just private, that she kept to herself. But every time I passed her door in the hallway, I felt it, that same silence. Heavy, watching, like the kind in my apartment, like the kind that had been there the night before, standing outside my door, listening. Then, there was the closet. When I moved in, the landlord walked me through the place, showed me the basics, the kitchen, the bathroom, the fuse box. But when we got to the bedroom, he hesitated, just for a second, but I noticed it. His eyes flickered toward the closet, a small, nondescript thing, nothing unusual, but his fingers tightened around the keys in his hand. And when I reached for the handle, just to peek inside, he stopped me. "That one stays locked," he said. I frowned. "Why?" "Storage." He didn't explain further. He just handed me the rest of the keys and left. I didn't question it, not at first. But now I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was inside that closet. Something I wasn't supposed to see, something I wasn't supposed to open. And then, the first real sign, something I couldn't explain away. It happened 3 nights after the door handle turned. I was lying in bed, exhausted but still unable to sleep. My body felt drained, my mind frayed at the edges. Then, a knock. Not from inside the apartment, not from the hallway, from outside. My breath caught in my throat. It was soft, rhythmic. 3 slow knocks, then silence. I waited, nothing. I told myself to ignore it. It was probably someone knocking on the wrong door. A mistake, nothing to be afraid of. But then, the knocks came again. 3, slow, deliberate. I sat up, heart pounding. I wanted to check the peephole, but something held me back. A feeling, an instinct. I did not want to see what was on the other side. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I stayed frozen, staring at the door, waiting for it to happen again. But it didn't. A new sound. Not knocking, not footsteps, something else. A soft scraping noise, like fingertips brushing against the wood. Tracing the edge of the doorframe, slow, testing, feeling. I gripped the blanket in my fists, my breathing shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears, and then it stopped. Silence, complete and utter silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, waiting, listening, but nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion took over. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, there was something outside my door. A footprint. Just one. Pressed into the dust. Leading to my door. I didn't open the door. I didn't want to know. But something told me that whatever had been knocking was still here, somewhere. Waiting. I didn't sleep after that. Not really. I'd close my eyes, try to force my body to relax, but every sound, every creak, every whisper of wind against the windows made my skin prickle. By the time the sun came up, my body felt like it had been drained of something vital. My limbs were heavy. My mind was foggy, but I told myself I had imagined it. That's what you do, isn't it? You rationalize. You try to explain away the things that don't make sense, because the alternative is worse. That night, it got worse. It was around the same time, past midnight. I was lying in bed watching the shadows stretch across my ceiling, and then I heard it, not from the hallway, not from the door, from inside my apartment, breathing, slow, shallow, just beyond my bedroom door. I held my breath, willing myself to be still. I listened. It wasn't the pipes. It wasn't the wind. It was close. Too close. As if someone was standing just outside my room, just on the other side of the door, pressing their ear against the wood. Listening. I reached for my phone. My fingers were stiff, numb. The screen lit up, casting a dim glow over my blankets. No messages, no missed calls, just silence. And then, it rang. The sound shattered the stillness, sharp and sudden. I jolted upright, heart hammering against my ribs. The number, no caller ID, blocked, a restricted line. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, and then against every instinct in my body I answered. For a moment, there was nothing. Just dead air, no static, no breathing, just silence. And then a sound, soft at first, faint but unmistakable. Breathing. My breathing, I froze. The sound on the other end, it was me. Not an echo, not a distortion. My own breath perfectly matched. I exhaled. The phone exhaled with me. I inhaled. The phone inhaled, exactly in time. Whoever was on the other end of that line was breathing with me. I hung up, tossed the phone onto the bed like it had burned me. The air in the room felt wrong, thick, too still. I forced myself to move, to stand, to put space between myself and that sound. My feet hit the floor, cold against my skin, and that's when I saw it. In the mirror, a reflection of my room, my nightstand, and in the corner, a shadow, tall, motionless, standing where no one should be standing. I spun around. Nothing. No one. I turned back to the mirror. The shadow was gone. I couldn't breathe. My skin felt too tight. My heart beat wild in my chest. I moved towards the door. Slow, careful. I needed to check. I needed to see. The handle shifted, a fraction of an inch, then another. A slow, testing movement. I stopped, frozen, heart hammering so loud I swore they could hear it from the other side. Then, a rattle. The handle jerked, harder this time. Not a test, not an accident. Someone was trying to get in. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I did neither. Instead, I moved closer, step by step, until I was inches from the door, until I could hear the faint, uneven breath from the other side. I reached for the peephole, held my breath, and then I looked. Darkness. Nothing. As if something was covering it from the other side. Something waiting. I jerked back. The handle rattled again, harder, more forceful. I backed away, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. And then it stopped. Silence, a long, terrible silence. I stayed where I was, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Minutes passed. Then, a soft, delicate sound, a whisper of paper, something sliding under the door. I stared at it. A single folded note. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to. With shaking hands, I reached down, picked it up, unfolded it. 3 words, scrawled in uneven, jagged letters. Don't open it. My skin went cold. I dropped the paper. My breath felt trapped in my throat. I looked back at the door. Then, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. Total, suffocating darkness. I grabbed my phone, tried to call someone, anyone. The screen glitched, flashed. Then, a call came through. No caller ID, the same as before. I didn't answer. I watched, frozen as the screen went black, then lit up again. A single message. No name. No number, just words. You shouldn't have looked. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. After what happened the night before, after the note, the phone calls, the reflection that wasn't there, I knew this wasn't something I could ignore anymore. I needed proof. Something real. Something I could show someone, anyone, so that when I finally said the words out loud, I wouldn't sound insane. So I set up a camera. Not just my phone, no, I found my old DSLR, the one with the motion sensor. I placed it on the bookshelf, angled perfectly at the door. I didn't know what I expected to see. But I knew, deep down, that something was going to happen. Because whatever was outside that door wasn't finished with me yet. 3 a.m. I knew the exact time because I had been watching the clock, counting down the minutes, waiting for something. And then, it started. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. A faint sound in the distance, a whisper of movement. But then, footsteps. Fast, heavy, rushing down the hallway outside my apartment. Not just walking, running. I sat up, heart pounding, breath locked in my throat. The footsteps grew louder, closer, racing toward my door. Then, silence. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just stared at the door, waiting. Waiting for what? I wasn't sure. Then, the camera beeped, motion detected. I didn't want to look, I didn't want to know. But my hand was already moving, reaching for my phone, opening the live feed. And there it was, on the screen. A figure, standing just outside my door, not knocking, not moving. Just standing. For how long? I didn't know, but the timestamp on the camera was still counting, minute after minute, and whatever was out there, hadn't moved an inch. I watched, frozen, as the seconds stretched into minutes. 10, 15, 20. The figure never moved, never leaned closer, never knocked. It was just there, as if it was waiting. Then, the door handle moved. This time there was no hesitation, no slow, testing motion. It jerked, hard, rattling against the frame, the lock barely holding. Again, harder, more violent. I scrambled back, nearly knocking over the camera. My phone slipped from my hands. The screen went black, and then silence. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The room was pitch dark, the air thick, suffocating. Then, a new sound. Behind me, I turned and my stomach dropped. The closet door. The one the landlord had told me never to open. The one that was always locked was open, not wide, just enough to see something move inside, a shape, shifting, waiting. My body acted before my mind. I ran, straight to the front door, fumbling with the lock, but it wouldn't turn, wouldn't budge, like it had been sealed shut. I turned to the windows, tried to pry them open. Nothing, the glass wouldn't even rattle, as if the entire apartment had been trapped. And then, the whisper, right next to my ear. So close I felt the breath on my skin. I told you not to open it. Blackness, a sudden all-consuming nothingness, like the air had been sucked from the room, like time itself had stopped. For a moment I thought I had passed out. But then I realized I was still awake, still standing in my apartment, but everything was wrong. The room was different. Not my apartment, but a version of it that didn't feel real. The walls stretched higher than before. The shadows were too thick, too heavy. And the closet door was gone, replaced by a dark, gaping hole. And from that hole, something was stepping forward. Something that had been waiting. Something that had been listening. I don't remember what happened next. I don't remember how I got out. But the next thing I knew, I was outside, standing in the middle of the street, the front door of my building wide open behind me. I didn't go back. Not that night. Not ever. I left everything, my clothes, my furniture, my phone. I didn't care because whatever was in that apartment had let me go. And I wasn't going to give it a reason to change its mind. I woke up. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't even remember leaving. But when I opened my eyes, I was in my car. The engine was off, the sun was rising, and my hands were shaking. For a long time I just sat there, trying to remember. Trying to piece together what had happened. The last thing I could recall. The closet. The whisper, the darkness, and then nothing. Just waking up here, like the night had erased itself. I turned to look at my apartment building. The door was shut now, the windows still, like nothing had ever happened, like it was just another morning, another day. But I knew better. I knew. I reached for my phone. My fingers trembled as I pulled up the camera feed, and when I pressed play, I almost wished I hadn't. The video started at midnight, nothing at first. Just my door standing there in the dark. Then the footsteps, rushing, fast, stopping right outside. I watched as the door handle twitched, then turned. I could almost feel it, the same way I had felt it last night. But then, something changed, because this time, the door opened, slowly, carefully, inch by inch. I could see the hallway, the empty, dark hallway. No one there, but the door kept opening, until the apartment was exposed, until whatever had been standing there stepped inside. I expected to see something, a figure, a shape, a shadow, but there was nothing. Nothing. Just the door opening on its own. Just air. But I knew something had walked in, because as soon as the door closed, the camera glitched, static filled the screen, for 5 full minutes, and when the image came back, the closet door was open. I shut off the video, tossed my phone onto the passenger seat like it was cursed, because I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't be in that apartment another second. So I left. I didn't pack, I didn't even go back inside. I just drove. Later that afternoon, I went to the leasing office. I needed to break my lease. I didn't care about the fees, the penalties. I didn't care about anything except getting as far away from that place as possible. The landlord was at the desk when I walked in. An older man, balding, tired-looking. He barely glanced up when I told him I was leaving. Like he had heard it before. I signed the papers, slid them across the desk, and then, just as I was about to leave, he spoke, quietly, almost to himself. You should have read the lease more carefully. I stopped, turned. What? His fingers tapped against the desk. His eyes still didn't meet mine. You weren't supposed to open that closet. My stomach dropped, my mouth went dry. I didn't, I lied. His lips twitched. Not a smile. Something else. Then why are you leaving? I couldn't answer, I couldn't move, I just stared at him. And then, he slid the papers back to me. Sign this too, he said. A final page. A waiver. A disclosure agreement. I skimmed it. Words stood out in fragments. Liability, tenant responsibility, unexplained occurrences, non-disclosure upon departure. I wanted to ask, I wanted to demand answers, but I didn't. Because some part of me already knew. Some part of me understood, and I didn't want to hear him say it. Because if he said it, if he confirmed what I already feared, then it would mean it was real, all of it. I signed the paper, he took it without a word, and I left. For good. Days later, I told myself I was fine, that it was over, that I had escaped. But then, I saw the news. I wasn't looking for it. I hadn't even thought about the apartment in days. But it found me anyway. A news article, an image, and a headline. Tenant reports strange activity in local apartment complex. I clicked. My breath caught in my throat. The story was almost identical to mine. A new tenant, same apartment, same hallway, same closet. And then, the security footage. Blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. A photo taken at 3 a.m., my old apartment door, and standing just outside, a figure, tall, motionless, watching, waiting. But the part that made my skin crawl, the part that stopped my breath entirely, was the tenant's statement. They had never seen anyone outside their door. Not once, not with their own eyes, only on the camera. I never went back, never checked on the next tenant, never tried to explain. Some things they don't need explanations. Some things aren't meant to be understood. You just leave. You move on, and you hope. Hope that whatever was there doesn't follow you. I don't have answers. I don't know what was in that apartment. A spirit, a stalker, or something worse? Something that doesn't exist in the way we understand existence. Something that watches, something that waits, something that moves when you aren't looking, that stands just outside your door, just beyond the edge of your vision, just out of reach. Until it isn't. Until it's inside. And by the time you realize it, it's already too late. What do you think? Have you ever experienced something like this? A sound you couldn't explain? A presence you felt even when you were alone? A door handle that moved when no one should have been there? Tell me in the comments. And if this story sent a chill down your spine, if you felt that lingering unease crawling over your skin, send this video to a friend. See if they would survive this. And if you thought this was terrifying, wait until you hear the story of the house that wouldn't let its owners leave. A place where time stops, where doors lock on their own, where the people inside disappear, one by one, forever. Click the next video if you dare.